right, good evening, everybody. Sammy Thunder here. Welcome back to the channel. I am really excited. I'm super stoked about this. I have a well-respected community content creator here. Everybody knows him. He is just a positive force of energy. That is Orlando from A Collector's Dream. Orlando, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, Sammy. Thanks for inviting me. It was great to meet you at the National.
Yeah, I mean that was a great experience. And the one thing that I took away from the national that I thought was really special is that you gave you made everybody you interacted with feel so good about themselves, and it's so important. Like they should know this person, they should know this person, this person. And it wasn't just you didn't just pick out one or two or three or four people in particular. You kind of did it with everybody. And I thought that, I mean, there's nothing more communal than that in being able to kind of intertwine everybody together to meet people they didn't know. And I think that is an absolute strength that you have. And I really admire that. And I think it's something that this community really needs. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Sammy. Just like everybody else, I was given a list, in this community also. And one of the reasons that I went to the National last year was because Vince, New York Yankees fan 7, was going to be there. And Joe Silver Jackify, I followed them. And I probably had 30 subscribers after about 6 months. And then Vince on his channel did a little video about my channel. And all of a sudden, this was just like a
Mhm.
month before the National. And then all of a sudden, my subscriber base shot way up, and I'm like, oh, wow, and I thanked them and stuff. And, I realized all these guys are going to be at the National. And I said, you know what, I've got to go. And I went over there. The first thing I did was when I went to the party at the Clarion rooftop, I went straight to Vince to really thank him and all that stuff. And from then on, he introduced me to everybody. I mean, Mangini was the first one. I walked in the door, Mangini was offering me a drink. And it's just, I felt, you know what, I've got to carry that on to other people, in the hobby. Maybe some people that are starting and things like that. Like, I remember when Theo Clemente Collector started, and very early on, he said he was going to shoot his first video of a show that he was attending. And it was funny because he did it, vertically instead of horizontally. It didn't come out too good and stuff. But you know, those are the type of things that we need to do just to help each other, because we really have a big community. And Sammy, I was talking to you over there at the National and stuff, and I talked to as many people as I could and let them know that for years, many collectors like me collected by themselves, with really no friends around that collected anything that I collected, other than maybe breaking cards and new stuff like that. So I want to kind of spread that and trying to get people. There's others that I want to get them on board. One guy that comments all the time, Mike Petty. I always tell him he's got an incredible collection, but he won't put it on YouTube. So I'd like to see more of those guys that have incredible collections and knowledge to get on YouTube. Just get your camera, get on YouTube, and that's really the message I want to spread with everybody, because that's what I did about a year and a half ago.
Well, it definitely seems like there's no limit, there's no ceiling to being able to add to the community because everybody's knowledge and everybody's experience is unique to them. And so what you may know now um, may change over time because someone who just joins this community and shows something new and unique, you learn. You're always constantly learning, you're always constantly seeing new things. And so, I mean, I remember the example that I can remember is I know Mike Moynihan, baseball collector, was adamant on getting Chris from Missouri to create a channel, and he did eventually. And you're now seeing a lot of what he's been bringing to the table, and so it's just really it's interesting to kind of see all these new content creators come out of the woodworks, and I think it's it's incredibly good for the community to be able to kind of see that evolution come full forward.
And Chris is the perfect example. And I saw him at the National. He had a custom made T-shirt and everything. I mean, he's really become a big part of the community.
Yeah, I mean, more, and also like I'm gonna personally thank Chris because I know he was responsible for the catering for the Thursday night party get together. So thank you, Chris, if you end up
Thank,
watching this. Yeah, that was a really
thank you.
special event. So um, tonight's chat, I wanted to kind of get into, and Orlando is a great example for this conversation. Is just talking about the evolution of card shows in general. Now, if I might understand right, Orlando, you have been a dealer for a good amount of years, and you've kind of seen a lot of these changes over time as far as like where card shows are at now versus maybe when you first were starting out into it. Um, would you be able to kind of talk a little bit about sort of those changes over time between when you started to where we're at now?
Yeah, when I first started, it really was, I was lucky because my mom never threw away my cards. So basically, when I realized I wanted to try to be a part-time dealer, was in the '80s, probably the mid '80s, and I did it through the beginning of the '90s, and then it just was kind of overwhelming. But when I first started, it was just mainly collectors, and they just would get together and have mall shows. Most of my shows were in a mall, different malls, different areas. I lived there in the Tampa area, so it was a lot of shows there. They weren't very big. I mean, a big show would be like 40 tables, and what you see it would be mostly modern, and some cards from the '80s, of course, mostly tops. You didn't see very much, of the Donruss. That's why, like the Mattingly '84 Mattingly Donruss, those cards were kind of more scarce. But tops really was in control there. But the good thing in those days was when you were even a small time part-time dealer could go to tops directly and become a direct buy directly from tops. And I was able to do that. You needed to have certain things here. I'll show you here real quick. This was well, take, take my name off of there, but this was my card when I was a dealer back then, and this is mine now.
Yeah.
YouTube. So I used to do the card shows with this gentleman who's passed away now, but it's Rich Altman here in Florida, and he did a lot Hollywood collectibles. He did a lot of shows, really all over the country, but I pretty much did a lot of his Florida shows. So I would drive, you know, all the different places in Florida and just do local shows. Really, since I had my collection, all my doubles or some other stuff I wanted to move, I'd take over there. And it was just about building my collection for the most part. What I was doing is just let's say I sold $600, I probably would buy $300 or $400 worth of cards. I always have to take some money back, at least a couple $100 or something to show I made some profit, so my wife would be happy and things like that. I brought some cash. Look, but other than that, I was building my collection, so that was one of the things that I really enjoyed. And I was a set builder at the time, but it was all small local shows, and I never really went to the national until 1992. And it was because it was in Atlanta and I could drive there. My wife doesn't fly, she still won't fly. So everywhere I had to go, I had to drive. So um, that was really the only time that I really had a good opportunity because it was during the Olympics during that time. And, the kids were good. They were able to go on their own and do the show, walk around, that type of thing. So I wanted to show one thing right in the beginning, like the biggest dealer there. at that time was here.
Oh, wow. That's so cool looking.
Alan Rose and Mr. Mint.
That is really cool. Can't
And
that's
you
like
can
a
see
one
he
in
was,
one.
yeah, he would hand this out, hand out cards. And the good thing is that he would talk to everybody. He was a big promoter type guy, and he was like loud, and you could hear him, you know, talking to people and showing his cards, flashing his cards. He was a flashy guy, but he had the best of the best, and he was the most expensive of one of those guys that had uh, cards that you never saw, or it was crazy. Of course, I couldn't buy anything from him, but I did spend time talking to him. And somewhere I have an autographed business card that he gave me, and he was pretty much the only one that had any type of things. I mean, Tops had a lot of handouts. They gave you a little bag. They did give you a little black bag with the magazine, and I've shown that in one of my videos, and little promotions and stuff like that. Uh, but for the most part, the biggest thing at the '92 that I remember was the promo cards. There was a lot of promo. They gave you little promo packs, and I remember just opening that up and looking at it. And I didn't really know much about it until, one of the dealers said, "You want to sell your promo pack?" I said, "Yeah, what? Tell me." And then I talked to him, and they were selling at that time for like $20 or $30, and you got them free. That paid for your entrance and everything, and more. So it was like, yeah, give me the promo pack and my kids' promo packs or whatever. And I kept one of each of that stuff, but all that stuff was when they really started promoting. But the shows basically was Tops. You know, there it wasn't like it is today. Uh, the National at that time was really more for collectors, and the uh, the area where it was the corporate area was, there was Upper Deck and other, other companies were there, but basically they just had like small, like a booth, like a dealer booth in the area, right in the middle there. That's what I remember about it. And it was a small part. I would say it was probably like maybe 20%, less than 20% of the entire floor.
Hmm.
But when you go now, it seems like half of the floor is corporate or breakers or media, or that's, I think, is the biggest difference that you see today.
It's definitely, yeah, it's definitely has exploded in terms of all these different I guess there are businesses like all these break companies and I mean obviously you still have Tops, you still have Upper Deck, you still have these corporations that make appearances, but they do have very elaborate booths set up. And kind of speaking on your experience at the National back in '92, uh, I mean, I can't say I did that, but I do remember going to shows in the early to mid '90s at the county center. These would be the Jim Ryan shows, also known as the East Coast National, but I don't think they were doing it then. I think it was more along the lines of just like a kind of a mini national. It would have maybe, 100 booths, 100 tables or more. But yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, it seemed like it was more just straight up um, collectors trying to build their sets and just dealers. Just it was very black and white. It was dealers, dealers, dealers. No, none of no big corporations kind of interfering or taking up space. But I actually want to ask you this question, which was, I mean, I know you started dealing in the '80s, but were collecting prior to that, just collecting baseball cards?
Yes, I
And
collected it in the late '60s and the early '70s. I opened packs and build sets from the packs that I opened.
did you ever attend any sort of organized collection meetup during that time?
No, no, I had four friends, brothers, that they were in the neighborhood and they did collect, so I collected with them. But it was just a teenage thing.
But you would do like you would make try to make trades with your friends and
Yeah,
try to complete certain sets that you needed. So all of y'all were breaking packs for whatever year it was, and so some of you may have had this certain player, and so y'all would make trades to be able to complete your sets. Is that kind of how it went?
Exactly. It's a funny thing because in those days, a lot of times it didn't matter who the star was. If you needed a number and your buddy had it, and I had an extra Willie Mays, I'd trade that for what I needed just to fill my set. And it was set building. It was where it was at in those days. There was no real speculation because it was just trying to collect it, trying to get every number in the set and build the set. That was the key.
So if you had like a Willie Mays and you and somebody needed the Bill Scourin, or you needed the Bill Scourin and your friend needed the Willie Mays, it would just be a one for one trade. It wouldn't be for like your Willie Mays for Bill Scourin and this guy and this guy. It was just a one for one trade.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if he had a couple of commons that I needed, I'd say, hey, give me those two for this one. But really, it wasn't anything about once you had a double. At least the way I was, and most of my friends were. If we had a double, the one that was in kind of worse shape, you'd kind of that's your trade bait, eventually.
Interesting. And so, and also, I guess the concept of like high numbers, was that a thing at the time, or did that kind of come later?
Really, for the high numbers for me, I didn't realize that they were high numbers in the beginning, because there wasn't that much reference back in the day. So we really didn't know. But the good thing about where I used to buy cars, it was a drugstore that called Budget Drugs, and they always had, because it was in the corner about a block and a half away from the school. So a lot of kids bought there, so they always had new boxes that they would bring in, and I really didn't have a problem getting the high numbers. But I know that in some areas, if the boxes didn't move as well, they'd hold on to those series until the box sold out. Then they'd order another one, and sometimes they never got to the high numbers. And I think that's one of the issues with those. But I know, I've got 71. Remember the 71 high numbers? I had doubles of probably each one, maybe triples in some of those. And I don't know, maybe just got lucky that I went to get that box at the time, but it was pretty cheap, and talking 10 cents a pack in those days.
Right. So obviously, I mean, you were a collector when you were young, and that kind of evolved. I mean, did your friends kind of lose interest over time and you kind of
Yeah,
maintained it?
yeah. My friends they really were into baseball. We played little league together, things like that, and they went on because father was the coach, and they were Cuban, and father was a like a player in Cuba, so he was a really really good coach. And actually, one of the sons made it to the was assigned to the minor leagues for the Yankees, but he never made it to the club.
Mm.
But really, they we didn't have I didn't have anybody after that. What happened was once we grew up, I after high school, I went on to college, so I kind of didn't do anything with that. It was in my mom's house. My whole collection was there. Then I got married right after that. I was 20 years old, had kids a few years after that, and then probably my mid 20s is when I started again. When my mom called me and says, I got your box of cards. What do you want to do with it? I said, I thought it was gone, and there was like six shoe boxes full of cards up in my closet. And I went and I got it, and that's how I started. Went through, started doubles, found out that there were some card shows, and started. For those days it was like $50. You get a whole table there, and you just. I said, I got a bunch of cards here. I had like two Nolan Ryan rookie cards in there. I had a lot of cards from probably
Mhm.
68. I had a few older than that, but mostly from 68 all the way up to about 76. And those are the years that I built those sets. A lot of them I was able to complete or almost complete with what I had. And I put that away, one of each. And all those doubles, I took them to the show and just put them out there. there was no grading in those days. Everything was raw, and so I just put it out there, and that's how I started part-time dealer.
So it really started from the duplicates from the 68 to 76, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And at the time that you were collecting, these cards were in shoe boxes, as you mentioned. Was there any sort of protection, or were they just kind of stacked in shoe boxes and just kind of kept out in the open in that sense?
Mine were stacked in shoe boxes, and some of them were in packs by teams that I had put a rubber band around it.
Mm.
But most of them, thank God, they were in great shape because they hadn't been touched. And they were all raw, not even penny sleeves, nothing like that. And I did, once you start doing the shows, that there were penny sleeves and things like that. But no holders. I mean, nothing really to. All mine was just penny sleeve at the time.
Were there holders back then, as far as, or
Yeah,
were they not really common?
there were holders. You know, it was like holders in those days. It wasn't like as common as they are now, and they were kind of expensive. You know, so basically, like maybe I don't know. Let's say that like a like a little sleeve or something was like the price of a one touch now, or something like that.
Mm.
And he's like, so it was one of those things. But there were pages, so I put a lot of my stuff in binders. After that, I put it in binders. So that's how I sold a lot of my by years. I put all of them in a binder and then did that. But the ones that I displayed, a lot of them were just with penny sleeves. I'd put them out there. But my purpose, Sammy, was to get my collection, get some money. Then I'd go through the dealers and try to see what they had so that I can fill my sets and things like that. And that was my purpose of the show.
I always feel like when I do card shows these days, I kind of fall in that same cycle where I'm not so much building sets, but I'm trying to fulfill my collection as far as what I want. And I've shared it multiple times. I mean, my collection is now streamlined to focus on rookie cards or second year cards, depending on who it is. And that helps kind of streamline things down. Um, so what I do generally now is like I'll sell cards that I don't like, third or fourth year cards, so I'll move those. Um, and at the end of the show, like I'll go around and with the profits that I make, I'll spend a little bit. And then the extra money that I do have, I would have to try to replenish the inventory that I lost. Was that ever the case with you? I mean, I know you've had, 68 to 76, those are a lot of years. And I wonder at that point, I mean, there's so much variety now in the way people collect. People either want singles of Hall of Famers, they want a set build, they want oddball cards. I mean, there's so many directions people can go in. But when you set up, it sounds like you had your 68 to 76 set. You were getting it out and ready for set builders. Was that the way people collected during the 80s?
That and then people started the player collecting, and I that's what I started. I was started looking for Mickey Mantle cards during those days. That was my favorite player, and that's it. Kind of switched that way to player collectors, and also during those days, uh, people started autograph balls, autograph photos. Really, not autograph cards at the time. Autograph cards didn't come along until later on. It was a crime to get a card autograph. I remember one time I had an Al Kaline rookie. I had a couple of them, and one of them was kind of rough shape. And Al Kaline was signing, and I took the card and had Al Kaline sign it. I knew it was not in great shape, but it was his rookie card, and he signed it. And I showed it to one of the dealers. He's like, "Oh, you just ruined that card." And I'm like, "Well, I had gotten it for like $20 or something like that. I figured, what the heck." And it was crazy because I ended up selling it later for like $75. You know, just to it was just one of those things that you didn't do that at the time. You didn't get cards autographed. So it was really trying to get more. For me, I started going back to the collecting cards from the 60s, early 60s, the 50s. And really, that was my lane, 50s and 60s cards. Once I really, I did continue to build every set from 75, 76, 77 and on. And I did that throughout the 80s all the way to about the 90s. Then you just bought the set, you know. But I kind of went back and started picking up some of those star players like Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays and Jackie Robinson and things like that. And some of them I moved, had to sell to get other cards and things like that. You know how it works. You like a card, but you want something else better, and you have to sell it. And eventually, I built virtually every set from the 60s, almost every set from the 50s during my building days and dealer days. And then after that, I focused more on certain players, went a little bit further back in history, and started some pre-war stuff and sold off a lot of my sets from there. Um, Finished my, I was missing the 52 Tops Mantle card I always wanted, but I did have everything else. And I was lucky enough to pick up my, in a deal, I got my 51 Bowman Mantle
Mm.
free because I bought this deal for a couple $1,000s back then, and that was one of the cards that was in there. And I bought it mainly because of that. But there was a lot of other cards from 49 to 54. A lot of players, Yogi Bear, a bunch of pretty decent players. I was able to sell all of those cards, recoup my money, and I still have my 51 Bowman Mantle, and I had it graded years ago, and it graded a 3.
Ooh, that's
So
must be a good feeling.
yeah, it's that's generally that's how I tried to build my collection over the years. And even at this year's national, I took a lot of cards to trade and sell, and I was able to sell a few things, and I was able to trade a lot of stuff. So that really worked out well for me because I couldn't, I'm retired now, so I can't be doing a lot of that stuff. And I uh, I told my wife I'm going to take $2,000 cash is what I'm going to take. That's my max cash spending, for the trip or whatever,
Mhm.
and I'm taking cards that really they're great cards, but when you want something better, you gotta move them. So that's what I did, and lucky enough, I got some great stuff out of that.
As a collector, how do you decide which cards to let go of when it comes to trading for something you want? I mean, how do you know like, or I guess better yet is, I mean, my experience is that there are certain players that I'm ready to move on from because they're not my PC guys. Is that sort of the same philosophy that you have? Like you said, Mantle is your favorite. So is it tough for you to let go of a Mantle and trade one, or is that on the table?
Uh, well, the manuals I have today, I won't trade them. Each one
Okay.
has like a story behind it of how I got it, and they're kind of a personal thing. Even though I could upgrade my mantles in some cases, I won't do it. Most of them I remember my 53 tops when I got it raw, who I got it from, and it kind of has a story. Even though the card has a stain in the back, hey, it is what it is.
Right.
But
But there are other players that you did bring
yeah,
with you.
you have to move players. I mean, unfortunately, all my Jackie Robinsons are gone. Those prices shot up. It was, I guess, a good opportunity for me to move some of those, and I went ahead and did that. Uh, but I look at it this way, Sammy. Those cards are out there. They are available. I could always buy them back if I really wanted. And many times I've gone out there. I can't tell you how many cards I had. I had a 60 a receiver, the receiver rookie. I sold that. I never have gotten another one, but I eventually will. They're out there, but many other ones. The 20 press rookie, I sold that, and I got another one. It's being graded right now, and cards like that you saw them all at the National. They're
Yes.
readily available.
Yeah.
So those type of cards, to me, I'm good with selling those guys, even if I have one in good condition, unless it's one that's really nice or has a history that I bought it from a friend of mine or something. Some of those I tend to keep it just for emotional reasons, but for the most part, a lot of my stuff I'll sell if there's something I really really want, and I'll go for that because I want something I'm going to really enjoy for the rest of my life, and that's the way I look at it. Everybody's different, but I always say just collect what you really really like, and you know go from there.
No, it's a great point, and it gets me thinking a lot because I think there's also an evolution of how you collect. One day you're a set builder, the next day you collect singles, next day you're collecting rookie cards like I'm doing now.
Mhm.
And it's kind of hard to foresee what's going to happen because right now my mind is saying I can never trade my Koufax rookie for something else. It's such a cool looking card and it's his rookie and it's the only card of his that I have. But as you mentioned, there's always something down the line that could, change your whole perspective as far as what you're interested at any point. Um,
Let me tell you one experience I had at the 92 National real quick.
yeah, sure.
When I That's where I really got into a different mindset as a collector. When I went over there, I took with me, I had some Leaf 1949 Leaf premiums that I was able to pick up from a collector, and I had a duplicate of the Lou Gehrig and a Walter Johnson. And I went around to the different dealers trying to really learn about it myself, what they knew about it versus what I knew about these things. And most dealers wouldn't touch it. Most dealers were, uh, I'm just looking for some real quick. Most dealers didn't know what it was. But as I was going around to the different dealers, I I looked at the press steel cards, and I really had never seen those press steel cards. Especially, I fell in love with the celebration set. It had come out in '89, but I never really saw it back. This was in '92, and when I saw those, I really fell in love with it, that's where I began to become a Hall of Fame autograph collector. Back from that thing, that national, it opened my eyes to different things, and I was able to meet during this process. I did sell my premiums to, I think this is the guy here, Alan Hager.
Oh,
And this
Stanford,
guy,
Connecticut.
he had like old rare stuff. He was one of the few guys in the show that knew what these pieces were. And I remember getting $300 for both of those, and I was like super excited because $300 back in '92 was a lot of money. And I went back to the other dealer that had the press deal, and I ended up buying the set from him that had some of them autographed already, and that's how I started my Hall of Fame baseball autograph collection. Then I got into that, and I did that for some years. Once I got out of the set collecting and went back further into the pre-war, and you've seen some of my pre-war stuff.
Right.
That's the
Yes.
kind of stuff I started at that time. I began also from that show talking to this gentleman here and other um, dealers. I learned so much, and I went back and during that era and began. I remember getting my first Goodwin Champions cards back in those days.
That's yeah. That's really really cool. I mean, there's always turning points in different at various times where you kind of steer your collection in a different direction, and that's a really. I mean, those memories stick. Those memories last, and so that's really cool that you're able to kind of give such detail to that story because clearly that had a profound effect. Um, I hope you don't mind if we go back a little bit to back to the conversation of being a dealer at card shows. Um, the one thing that I find sometimes, because I'm doing shows, the small ones these days, and I'm finding that inventory is running low. It's running low, and it seems like these days trying to find collections or trying to find anything like that to restore any inventory can be difficult. Can be a little difficult for you. I know you were selling your sets, like you mentioned, but were there times where you had to find ways to kind of continue the cycle of
Mhm.
replenishing inventory? And if so, what was that process like for you?
That's a great question, Sammy. Um, I was, I would say, lucky or privileged at the time to work for a small publishing company. Uh, it was called The Flyer. And eventually, it was bought out by the people from the Penny Saver. And those were local publications, and the main thing was, just a local place similar to what eBay was before eBay. They would be mailed to the small towns, and you'd have all the garage sales and all that stuff in there. And as an employee there, I was able to get a free ad. So I would just run a free ad in the garage sale section there saying, buying sports cards, buying baseball cards, call me, or, whatever. And I got a lot of leads from that. That helped me out a ton. I'm telling you, I was able to pick up a lot of really good stuff. Or people call me and tell me I'm having a garage sale. Come and see what I got. I'd also go to garage sales because those local papers had, always a garage sale section, that type of thing. There was also some antique malls and flea markets, and I'd go to some of those when I could because there really weren't too many shows back in the day, and those are the times when I would replenish. But running those little ads in those local little paper there, um, you know, it was awesome because every once in a while I'd get something and it was like, look at this guy, what he's got, and I was fair with the prices always. I put my Beckett or we had, it was called CCP, another guide in those days. And, I was fair with them. Most of them had no idea what their stuff was worth,
Right.
but you would get that, real cheap. They would happy to get anything for it. So that's how I really replenished a lot of that. And also from the dealers. Would go up to dealers and ask them every show. My first question was, any new collections you've picked up, any new things that you guys have picked up. And when you do the shows kind of regularly, you get to know the dealers. So you just ask them, and a lot of times they'll say, yeah, I picked up this, and they bring a box of stuff that we're going to set it out for sale. I'll buy the whole box of if it's good stuff, or at least pick through and see what you can do. That's one of the benefits about being a dealer because you're the first one to see everybody's stuff, and sometimes you get good deals that way. So those are some of the ways that I replenished my inventory when I was a dealer.
That's really interesting because yeah, that's one of the disadvantages that I have is, um, I mean, even right now the inventory level is running low, and so you got to pay for the table, and so sometimes your inventory is not strong enough to be able to kind of meet to make it worthwhile because if it's a $75 table and you don't have that amount, well, I mean you will have that amount in cards, but you may not be able to kind of turn a profit or enough of a profit to make it worth your while. And obviously, expenses like driving your car to the place, and there's a lot of ins and outs and so forth. So, I think that's a great point is being able to interact with the dealers and check in with them because that is definitely where a lot of those deals do happen. And also people coming up to the tables and saying, "Hey, I have this. Are you interested?" Um, so that is very helpful information. I'm sure not only for me but for other people that watch this video to be able to kind of gain a better understanding of maybe okay, I can kind of go this way or this way to be able to make it work. Um, but what was I going to say? Yeah, I think being a dealer nowadays, I know there's a lot of people doing it, um, and I'm always impressed with the way that they or the way they kind of conduct themselves. And like B Roth, Brian, he's a full time dealer, and I'm gonna probably see him at the county center, which is where the East Coast National is this year. And so yeah, I'm always amazed at how he's able to do this full time and make it work for him. Um, when you see the card shows nowadays, do you ever ever want to kind of set up a table at some point? I mean, you don't still do that, do you?
No, no, I stopped many years ago. I stopped around the mid 90s is when I stopped. It got to a point that it was just so many different card companies, so much competition in those days. I mean, that's when all it just went. Well, the competition was great. It produced all the new stuff that we have today. You know, the patch cards and autograph cards and relic cards. All that was done in those days. But it just got crazy, and I got out of it. And as I got older, I just began to consolidate my collection, and I sold off all my sets and sold off a lot of my stuff. And as I moved a few times, moving all that stuff was just crazy, and I just decided that's it.
Yeah,
So I just began just trying to get the Grail cards that I've always wanted. And I went that direction. I'm kind of glad I did.
that's really awesome to kind of hear all this. So, um, before we finish, I just want to ask one last question, which was when you were a kid collecting with your friends, do you remember any trade that you did that is monumental?
Mm. I no, I can't remember back in those days exactly what it was. I'm in my late 60s. That was way back when I was a teenager. I can't remember. I just remember trying to complete my sets and
It was more
yeah, I,
just,
I
I need
yeah,
this, you need this.
yeah, I do remember putting some cards in bike spokes and things like that.
Yeah.
We did that all the time. And when we played with the cards, we threw them against the walls. We flipped them. I remember all of that. I remember they were just for play and for the gum. I remember
Mhm.
that when I brought packs home, and I would have a stack of 6, 7 of little gums. My sisters would come and say, "Can I have a gum? Can I?" They were just stuff the gum in their mouth, and it was more of they didn't care about the cards. Nobody cared about the cards. It was for fun. You know it wasn't really a thing people collected.
Right. All right. Very cool. Well, um, thank you so much, Orlando, for taking the time talking with me about the history of card shows for you, collecting, different styles of collecting, and being able and almost in some ways strategizing to be able to kind of keep this process and this cycle going, because it sounds like I kind of go along. I went along the same path as you have, which is, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I would sell my collection. I would sell to collect essentially, and
Exactly.
it seems like that's kind of the path, the same path that I'm going down right now. And so by talking with you,
Mhm.
it really does provide some great insight and knowledge to kind of help me going forward. And I'm sure not just me, but other people who watch it, like I mentioned, can take away a lot of information. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, Sammy, it's a slow process. A lot of people, unless you have, $1 million, then you can get everything you want.
Hmm.
But for us regular guys, I was a salesman, door-to-door salesman. I wasn't making a lot of money raising 2 kids. For us, it's a slow process, and that's what people need to understand. This is not a race, to the finish or anything, or to beat anybody else. Take your time, get a card, but get one that you really like. don't go crazy about it. You know, they're all out there, and take your time. Patience is the key. You know, I think, you know, a lot of people just end up buying so many cards, and then half of them, they really, a few years from now, they won't like it. Well, they won't want them, you know.
Hmm.
So just take your time and collect. It takes time. It takes years to build a great collection. It's not something that happens right away, you know. So I look at you, and you're doing what I was doing. You know, 20. I don't know how old you are, Sammy, but I think you're in your 40s, I think.
Uh, 30, 36.
Okay, 36. See,
Close.
I got a little over 30 years on you.
Yeah.
So what you're doing now is what I was doing back then. So by the time you get to my age, doing what you're doing, you'll develop a collection, you know, better than mine, I'm sure.
Oh,
So
well,
it just that's the way it works, Sam. Take your time and get the right cards and focus your collection on something that you're gonna like in the long term, not just you know, something, you know, I like it, but you know, no big deal. That's what the problem with this is, a lot of influencers. You know, people see something and it's the fear of missing out. You know, "Oh, I want it. I want that bad." Do you really
mhm.
want it that bad? Think about it before you jump in and dive into the deep end of the pool, you know?
It's a good
And
point.
that's kind of my message. But slow and steady wins the race, Sammy. Go that route.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Thank you so much, Orlando. Appreciate it. Are there any final thoughts you wanted to bring up before we finish?
It was just great to meet you, and hopefully next time that we meet at the next national, we'll just hang out a little bit longer.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for everyone for watching. Definitely more videos coming out sometime. Not really sure when the next one will be, but um, it's been a great past week with the National. And there's a lot of conversation that's going to be happening post National. So thank you so much for watching and have a great night.